jerseys and, of course, the Maple Leafs, their home white uniforms.
Toronto is the center of the hockey universe. Would you call the ACC Mecca?
It's like a temple, baby! Oh, yeah!
So far, this series has been completely unpredictable. The Sens stroll into the ACC in Game 1 and blow the Leafs out 5-0.
The Leafs win, and then T.O. will just be painted blue.
All the way,
blue and white.
number one!
W.
I heard David Amber talk a moment ago about the go-to guys for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Isn't it interesting that the key guys for Ottawa to shut down are two former 67s, Gary Roberts and Alan McCall. By the way, it's a good thing it's a playoff game, not a preseason game, because in the preseason, you have to dress at least 10 regulars, and Rod, I'm not sure Toronto has quite that many in the lineup.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I gotta go find a TV set as soon as possible.
All right, and we'll get your ears checked out.
This is a pivotal game, and from your vantage point, you will not miss a thing.
It is Sportsfeld story time. We are going back to May 4th, 2002. Maple Leafs versus Senators. Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals in Air Canada Centre. The Battle of Ontario. The Maple Leafs on the edge of falling behind 2-0, 2 home losses to the Ottawa Senators. The little brother finally getting one up on Big Brother. Before we get into the game, Jake, I got to say, and maybe this is a bias re-listen, sure seemed like Bob Cole wanted Ottawa to win this game, didn't it?
A little bit. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I feel like when he was retiring and there was all the justifiable sort of outpouring of Bob Cole love, I remember being pretty cynical about it. But these games were so much more fun with him calling them than anyone today.
Yeah, he really he sets the tone. And
I don't know if it was an anti-Leaf bias necessarily the way he was calling this one, but I do think that it's just, two Canadian teams. One's, as you said, little brother. I feel like the narrative was there for a pro Senators thing. I get it. I think it doesn't necessarily bug me as much as listening to Jim Hewson actively root against the Maple Leafs now. And I rewatching this game did sort of give me a new appreciation for Bob Cole, which was kind of nice. There is it's such a nostalgic sound for playoffs, hearing him say nonsense.
The pregame numbers are pretty crazy. As we mentioned in episode 1, the Maple Leafs had to grind it out against the Islanders. No Sundin in this one for the Maple Leafs. Bob Wren is playing his one and only NHL playoff game. One of 6 NHL playoff games he will play in his career. But Patrick Lalime, 0.32 goals against, a .988 save percentage. They had just waxed the Flyers. They were well rested, and they had been 5-0 in game 1 against the Maple Leafs. So Senators, as confident, I think, as they ever were at any point in the Battle of Ontario. Maybe, I think this is probably peak Senators optimism in the Battle of Ontario.
I think I think they would have to. I also think I can't really remember if it's this game specifically, because so many from these years kind of, after however many years it's been now, 18 years, sort of blend together in my brain. But I feel like this series, the pregame jitters and hype that you would get right before puck drop was also at its peak. I remember this was jump up and down in your living room as they were settling in for the opening face-off kind of tension. I remember it was fun.
A minute in, Cujo has to make a ridiculous save. A minute into the game,
they jump on him.
Yes, and we talked about this a little bit at the end of the last episode, but the experience of watching Curtis Joseph going back and looking at it, just the pure, like, every save was athleticism and nothing else. He would dive at any puck that was low, sliding around. Rebound sometimes would be a thing, but it's sort of amazing he was effective at all when I go back and watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this save a little later, but there's a save in one of the overtimes where I think Hossa tries to go 5-hole, and instead of just like dropping to his knees to stop the puck in his chest, he just kicks out both his feet to kick it away.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just seems so unnecessary. You were talking last episode about like, was Alex Mogilny sort of ahead of his time? I truly wonder what Curtis Joseph would have been like as a goaltender today.
Yeah. Well, any extra movement today is penalized, basically.
That's what I mean. Like, would he have been like a replacement level goaltender in 2020? It's odd.
The Maple Leafs do score first. What a shift from Domi, Corson, Pilash, Green. Like,
buddy, you're
awesome.
grinders.
Awesome. Corson gets it in deep. Domi with a big hit. Corson digs it out. It gets back to Carol Pilash, who pinches in, goes all the way around behind the net, and finds Travis Green, your current coach, the Vancouver Canucks, by the way. Travis Green. This has to be my fondest Travis Green memory, I would say. I
think it's got. I don't know if there's. I can't, like, other than him just being associated with these teams, I can't say that I have like a ton of real fond Travis Green memories, except his mullet when he was younger.
Another thing that keeps, I had this written down a bunch of times, and I know we already talked about Cujo, but his fearlessness playing the puck is unbelievable. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It doesn't matter where the puck, like, he goes and gets it.
And it's not only ridiculous, it also seems, again, like so much of what he does unnecessary. Like, he knows he has, not that like the defenders on this team outside of, Kaberle, McCabe, and maybe 1 or 2 others, like, they're not that they were great players, but like they're still there. They could have gone and got the puck.
No trapezoid back there.
That's true. That is true. Another wrinkle as to how Cujo would fit. Because like I feel like that was a lot of, like Belfour was like that too. Belfour loved going out and playing the puck, and he was excellent at it. But it's interesting, these guys at that time and what the NHL considered like things that were holding scoring back that they had to change in the lockout.
He's fearless with it. He slaps it around the boards. He'll tap it out front. It's pretty interesting to watch. He seems really small too. Like his equipment. Look, he was wearing road hockey equipment basically.
I loved his pads though. I was a huge fan of the Cujo pads. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I like the aesthetics.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. I think they had some stylish goalies. Obviously, Felix Potvin and Belfour came in with that classic setup. A stylish time to be a Maple Leafs goalie. Anyway, a few minutes after Travis Green goal, it's our faves. It's your faves. It's Mogilny gets it into the sort of mucks it up on a forecheck. They cough it up to Tucker. Bang. 2-0 Maple Leafs.
Good play for Havlat. Got a stop by Joseph. Curtis Joseph is solid in the early going of this one. 5 Ottawa shots now. 3 by Toronto. 1 of them a goal. Here comes Tucker. Scores! Tucker makes it 2-0 on a high shot over Pembridge Lally.
I wasn't sure when we were going into this which Leafs team this was, but rewatching this game, and like obviously for the end of this game, but just in general, Gary Roberts was insanely good for this run. And like, I remember that. I mean, it was him and McCauley were the big scorers in this run. Like, everyone who's a Leafs fan from back then will always remember Roberts, McCauley. But like, how did Al McCauley not have become like the superstar that he looked like in these 3 weeks? And man, Gary Roberts, just
so good.
So much better than I remember. Like, I remember him scoring a lot in these playoffs, but he was dominant on the ice.
I have it. I go into my notes here as I was taking as I was watching, and so many times I'm just noting that like Roberts doesn't look tired. He doesn't look like shook at all. Like, he's just so calm. It's awesome. He's so cool and collected and within himself, and like, man, Gary fucking Roberts.
I think we talked about it a lot with the Raptors and how Kawhi sort of had that settling presence to him. And I was thinking watching this game of a team that's like, as we've said, it's a must-win game at home, hated rivals, and it just keeps going. I feel like Roberts' presence really sort of there's a couple minutes throughout the game where you can see the Leafs kind of knowing that Sundin's not there to do this. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Roberts really like kept them together and kept them whole for not just this game, but especially this game.
Things get a little back and forth to end the period, but through 20, ACC is rocking. 2-0 Maple Leafs. Things looking good. Second period starts. Travis Green is taking the opening draw, and I think it's Harry Neal is like, Travis Green's been incredible tonight. He scored, and he's 6-0 on the draws. And I think because they scored that goal with the aggressive play of Domi and Corson, and they're looking to do that same tone to start the season, Green immediately cross-checks somebody in the face. 10 seconds in, a penalty, just immediately, as soon as the period starts.
Well, that's what you did then, right? That was the sort of, you're up 2-0, go literally punch them in the mouth. Even if you take a penalty, it sends the message. And then we know what happened.
The Sens really push the tempo. Like, I think one of the things we didn't mention when recapping the Battle of Ontario was a lot of the time the Maple Leafs weren't the better team, right? They were winning. Like, I think this game is a nice example of it. And this series maybe is like, the Leafs don't play better this entire game. They're not dominant wire to wire, right? Like, Ottawa pushes the tempo for basically the entire second period and a lot of the third.
Well, I mean, you look at the guys on the ice for both, like, take away Mogilny and obviously Sundin, who wasn't playing, and like, you can Roberts kind of, but it's not really his style. Like, there weren't a lot of skill guys, quote unquote, on this Leafs team. And the Senators were just, as you said last episode, Hossa, Havlat, Alfredsson, like, they had guys, Sammy Salo, like Fisher, like
Radek Bonk.
Radek Bonk. They were very different styles, and I wonder, and like, it does almost seem like the Senators were this Senators team was not fully, obviously, but had a little bit of like a build towards what you see today. Or at least more so than the Maple Leafs did. This Maple Leafs team was very much like, and I think it's why it took us so many years in this city to get over truculence. Like, these teams were, they like, Darcy Tucker could also score, but like, these teams were a bunch of guys who just hit people and then sometimes could also score.
Yeah, their Maple Leafs are very slow in this game, with the exception of Mogilny. Not a lot of like speed play. There's a lot of chip and chase, a lot of like putting the puck sort of to the middle and to nowhere, and a lot of crashing, a lot of guys flying around.
I remember that for years with the Maple Leafs. Like, when we got Jason Blake, who obviously never lived up to his contract, but just the idea of having a guy who was fast and could score was like, oh, this is the missing piece. And I guess in retrospect, it's also sort of the thing that we talked about, like, how did they never put real scoring pieces alongside Sundin, which will forever be sort of the great question.
Yeah, I think Mogilny was a nice fit, and this team is pretty closely built. I think this and the Ron Francis, Brian Leach one is probably as close as they got to really giving him the balance and the options. Yeah. But they would play Hoagland on his line. So
that's right. Maybe that's why I hated him so much.
Third period things. My big note here was how dangerous Mike Fisher becomes for like 5-6 minutes. There's just a span where he is on fire. He scores 3 minutes in.
Impossible. Very Cujo goal.
You're right. Haven't done that very much at all. Score! An impossible angle. A shot beats Joseph high. From the far side, Ottawa just circling around with it, and coming out, and before you could blink, the shot was fired high by Fisher, and Joseph didn't move at all. It's tied.
It was a very Cujo goal. As I sort of mentioned earlier, that Cujo would make two incredible saves on cross-ice things or one-timers and big flashy glove save, and then he would let in a screened wrister that you're just like, just move your pad a little bit. So it's a seeing eye one from Mike Fisher.
I do wonder, like we were talking last episode about how Lalim sort of will always be remembered for the flubs in Game 7. And like, I think that Curtis Joseph was a better goaltender than Patrick Lalim, but like maybe Cujo's flubs were just at the right time. Cause like he did these all the time. And like he didn't do them in the big games. So it's a funny retrospective career, I think.
Absolutely. I would agree. He's a very interesting sort of goalie of the era, of a type that doesn't really exist anymore. Boy, the Maple Leafs, like the ACC gets really nervous and quiet. My big takeaway from the most of the third period is you really see Chara starting to blossom into like what will become a dominant defenseman who's still in the league. We're 18 years later and he's still in the friggin' league. He's going in front of the net. He's like completely shutting down his own blue line. It's impressive, and he plays a shitload of minutes in this game.
Yeah, this is like one of the first of many memories I have as a Maple Leafs fan being like, he's just big, like whatever. Chara's not that good, and then just absolutely bodying us for 18 years now.
He plays 44 minutes and 19 seconds in this game. First on Ottawa, but Maple Leafs, McCabe plays 52 minutes. If you can believe that.
Bryan McCabe played so much because this team had no defense.
Yeah.
They had McCabe and Kaberle, and that was kind of it for, I guess, until like, I mean, Yuskevich was there, and then he went out for Svela, and they got Leach. But like, the defense on these teams were McCabe and Kaberle for a long time.
Totally. No, Jurke Lume plays 2 minutes and 10 seconds in a game that goes 6 periods.
That's wild. Why?
Wade Belak also played in this game as a defenseman.
I believe you're correct.
He plays less than 10 minutes. So we're talking about two guys combining to play 10 minutes. The rest of it is all McCabe and Kaberle.
There's a great Bob Cole moment near the end of the third period, I think. Might be in the first overtime, but I think it's in the third period, where obviously Tomas Kaberle's whole thing in Toronto was that he doesn't shoot, and which I always thought was a silly thing to pin on him, but I do blame him for spawning all of the shoot men that exist in Toronto now. But Bob Cole is a great moment where Kaberle has the puck at the top at the blue line, and Bob Cole just goes, Kaberle has it, doesn't like to shoot for some reason, and then just laughs as Kaberle passes it. And it just seemed like such a dad watching a hockey game for a like major national broadcaster. That also, speaking of broadcasters, this game was on ESPN2, as was all of the NHL playoffs, which is funny.
This third period ends like hilariously. The final 20 seconds, the Maple Leafs turn it over in their own slot twice, and then Gary Roberts basically gets a clean shot seconds before the buzzer goes and completely fans on it, and it rolls off the back of his stick. Both teams nearly give this game away in the final 20 seconds of the regulation. It
didn't look like a game that was going to go 3 overtimes. I would put it that way.
Should be noted, Aki Berg is on the ice on the turnovers. That's where they were at. But anyway, 2-2. Maple Leafs, it's been a minute. They haven't scored since the first period, and they only scored... I mean, they didn't score anything in the first game, so we're through 6 periods this series. Maple Leafs are outscored 7-2. So Ottawa's feeling pretty good, I think. They drove the play definitely through the second period, and I think they drove the play for most of the third period. I remember thinking this was probably it, and like you said, didn't feel like it would be a long series or a long game. I thought Ottawa had all the momentum and was about to come out and score in the third period or the first overtime.
I did too. And then in retrospect, this series really is sort of And this game is sort of emblematic of what the Battle of Ontario was like back then.
Yeah.
Like Ottawa just outscoring the Leafs 7-2 through 6 periods, and they lose. Just seems... I think in retrospect, I get it more now. Of like the Senators just like severe dislike of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, absolutely. For every reason you could think of. We had Tucker. I mean, and Domi.
Yeah.
I think Ottawa, they have Chris Neal for this game, and he was sort of brought in to be a counter to that group.
And he was. Man, I hated Chris Neal. Oh my God.
He was effective at being Chris Neal.
Yeah, exactly. And Domi was effective at being Ty Domi, but he was ours, I guess, which is, I don't know. And speaking of careers that haven't aged well.
I was never a big Domi guy.
Nor was
I. A Maple Leaf. I wasn't like... I never propped him up, you know?
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I wanted him to be anybody else. That would have been great with me.
Yeah, it always felt like if they could use that roster spot on another guy who could score, it would have been fine. But like the meltdown in the city would have been unbelievable if they got rid of Ty Domi in 2002.
That's true. So we move forward. We have completed regulation time. The ACC, as we know it, is switched into nervous mode. We've seen some flurries both ways, some great saves, and a lot of big names. We are about to head into 3 more periods of overtime. We will sink our teeth into that in the next episode of Sportsfeld Storytime.